The Ted Lasso welcome wagon has arrived.
Ted!
Well, Keeley is just the best. She genuinely wants the best for people, and the relationship that she has with Roy is just the heart of the show to me. I find the methods in which she tries to get Roy to connect with the more vulnerable and sensitive side of himself to be so touching, for lack of a better word, comical and honest. How has Keeley's beliefs, personal values, in way of life impacted the way that you carry yourself through life? Has her perspective challenged you to look at things differently?
In my real life, I do believe that I'm good at being a positive force for my friends and my family and all the people that I love around me and that inspire me, and I really value that with my friends, and I think it's so important to tell people how much you appreciate them and how brilliant and beautiful they are and how they make your life better. And the truth is, I'm not good at that with myself. I'm not. I can be a pretty wicked bitch myself, and I can be, yeah, pretty cruel. And Keeley came into my life and is a bit like a guardian angel, because I think she
Mhm.
really kind of made me stop in my tracks and try to be kinder with myself and try to be more forgiving and uh, patient. And I'm so grateful that she came into my life because of that.
That's beautiful. Like I feel the same way. Like I wish there were, Roy and Keeley were there for me in certain situations to offer me advice on how to approach certain things. So it's really wonderful.
I think it's so important to talk about things, anything, whether it's you want to talk about things going on in your brain, things going on in your heart, or things going on in your vision, or what you're hearing, and for people that you either admire or you trust or you
Mhm.
um I don't know, that don't make you feel small for needing to talk about vulnerabilities or
Yeah.
about, I don't know, things that I find some people get nervous about. And I think it's, in this day and age, we need to be able to talk about things that scare us and that, we find difficult, because it's amazing how many people around us have the same things going on.
Yeah, yeah, well said. Um, the language of these characters is so beautiful. All throughout the show, my wife and I will look at each other and be like, damn, we're going to have to write that on our motivational whiteboard as we step out each day out the door. Additionally, there's a particular rhythm to the more comical moments, especially between Keeley and Roy. There's like a moment in the season when they're on a park bench that was just like the timing of it was really great. I'm curious if the language of this show is easy to adopt and make your own, or is there a process in place for you to casualize it?
You know, Brett, I've been doing a bunch of interviews with Brett and the magical Brett Goldstein. And he's also one of the writers on the show, as well as being
Mhm.
Roy Kent. And he's actually told me that initially in the beginning, Keeley, the way she spoke was a little different. And then when I signed on and they got to know me a little bit, they definitely added more words and wanted her to talk quicker, because I sometimes talk at turbo speed and slightly make up my own version of a language.
Mhm.
And so, actually, a lot of the dialogue for Keeley, I find sits in my mouth very easily. But when it comes to comic timing, that I give full credit to my co-stars for, because that's beyond me. That's, I watch this wizardry happen around me, and I've definitely had moments where I've gotten it wrong, and I have an extraordinary cast around me that are patient and also willing to help me when I don't get the comic timing of things right. I think, again, I'm constantly learning on this set all the time.
This was really wonderful. I could sit here all day. I have so much more that I'd love to ask you, but I really do appreciate your time, and I hope that we can talk again for season three.
I would love that, and I really, really appreciate talking to you. And yeah, I encourage you to talk to people about all the things you want to talk.
Jamie's character arc is one of my favorites to follow. I think audiences are in for a real treat this season, seeing a different side of him, this calmer, more collected side. How has the growth and journey of Jamie impacted how you perceive life? Are you thinking about things differently? Has he opened you up more creatively?
I'm definitely thinking I could use more bronzer in my life. I think that's probably something that Jamie's taught me. Uh, I don't know, man. It's a really good question. I feel like we've all been through quite a large, there's this pandemic thing that's been happening, and I feel like it's taken a lot of people, it's given a lot of people chance to sort of take stock, and I feel like a lot of people they've gone through a lot of life changes, and I almost feel like when I came back to film season 2 with Jamie, I was like, I think that Jamie's gone through a massive shift, and certainly throughout season 2, I feel like we see him go through this like sort of life change, or certainly all of that emotional heavy lifting that we saw in season 1, we're seeing sort of come to fruition in season 2. And yeah, I kind of feel like there's the things that the sort of charm that he tried to use, or maybe just like the arrogance that he had before, it doesn't really work anymore. That's something that he could do when he was an 18-year-old brat and, was super rich and famous. And
Right.
now he's a 24-year-old brat and, super rich and famous, but it doesn't really, So I think that, yeah, I feel like there's a parallel where, we've all gone through these big life changes. And I think coming back to Jamie was like, oh yeah, he's human. He's just like all of us.
So when you start out, are you thinking about where Jamie comes from, the things that we don't necessarily see on the page, maybe the relationship that he has with his dad, and how often would you say, if you do come up with those stories, do they align with actually what happens to him and the hope that you have for him?
Mm. Well, I think that one of the great things that I learned about the way that Jason Sudeikis approached writing all these characters, and of course working with Brendan Hunt and with Joe Kelly,
Hmm.
and then also with Bill Lawrence, but particularly, this show is in Jason's bones, and that's something that Joe Kelly often says about Ted Lasso. And so it was good working with him quite closely, with Jason quite closely, in that he had a very clear idea of where he had been and where he was going. And whilst I couldn't say where he was going, I could also bring to the table sort of, some of my um, offers of what I think that looked like. And I would use Jason's as a template, and then just sort of fill the colors in,
Hmm.
where maybe it was where I wanted to see a bit more sort of depth in that for me. And I think the cool thing is, and Jason and I actually had a conversation at one point where the decisions that an actor makes, doesn't the audience, it sort of has nothing to do with the audience sometimes. They don't
Hmm.
need to know that I think that this thing happened 5 years ago and that's affected Jamie in this sense. There's just something I can bring to it. um and so yeah, I think that there's a lot of rich stuff in there about, and you see throughout the whole show, particularly this season, of parental relationships. um we see a lot of the characters go through that. And I think that Philip Larkin said it pretty well. They mess you up, your parents, don't they?
Yeah, 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 yeah. I just adore Higgins. I love his now small desk and how he tries to class it up with a plant and pins, no matter where he is. I also love the comments he makes. I just laughed and laughed when he says, "I need to mentally prepare for the conversations that follow watching Empire Strikes Back with my kids when Luke and Leia kiss."
Yeah.
Because these are the things that keep me up at night, Mr. Swift. Like I'm thinking about these things when I'm going to show my kids and what combos I'm going to have.
Exactly, yeah. Um, yeah, no, it's yeah, Higgins. They still continue to write wonderfully for Higgins, and yes, he becomes a bit of a nomad, office-wise in this series, and yeah, there will continue to be various surprises along that theme.
One of the great things about the Ted Lasso series is getting the chance to celebrate the big wins of the sports season, but also the small victories, whether that's Coach Lasso getting getting through to a player, a relationship blossoming among teammates, or a character overcoming an obstacle. What has been some of the small victories that you've had since being a part of this show?
It's just been, well, I don't know about small victories, but I suppose it's the show has inevitably rubbed off. The positivity has rubbed off. It's made me question, any, grumpy moments I may have. And I have to think, come on, and have a little bit of a word with myself. And there is a kind of what would Ted do? Because I think the key element about the positivity of the character, Ted Lasso, is that not only does he inspire people, but when he's talking to people and they are incredibly negative, he doesn't get drawn into that. And that's a very attractive thing to do. He acknowledges it in a fun way. And I think that's one of the strongest things you can do because it's so easy to do, isn't it? And that's how you end up with a crowd with torches, is to just spread poison around, but he doesn't do that. And so, I hopefully I've taken that on board a little bit.
Yeah, Ted Lasso's positivity is infectious. Actually, we watched it a few times during during quarantine, and so much so that my wife does some stitching, and she did Believe, and then put that on our wall just so it was a way to kind of get through things.
Great.
Yeah. But there's a lot of lines outside of just Believe where, like even this season where he says something like, forget your mistakes and failures and move on. And it's funny how things make you cry knowing that they existed, and same for them being gone. And so is there a piece of dialogue that you gravitated towards the most that has helped you discover something about yourself or rediscover something about yourself?
Wow, that's a good question. I think that although I'm not a footballer, I love the fact that he says, I want these guys to be, the best they can be on and off the pitch. And I think that's such a, I know that managers, people in managerial positions, not just in sports, have taken to the show in quite a big way for those kind of comments. And I think, be yourself, be the best person you can be. I just think that's a great ethic.
Under pressure.
All right, let's go kick their butts.
Butts on 3.
Works for me. 1, 2, 3. Butts!